Hello, this is Rita Liu, and you're watching The Shift Asia. Today, we're going to be speaking to Arocha, which is active in community-based practical conservation projects around the world. They're focused on resolving issues that threaten ecosystems and the diversity of their flora and fauna. Some projects are small-scale and led by volunteers. Others are bigger budget programs involving whole communities dependent on the health of local forests and wetlands. I'm here with Peter Harris, co-founder, President Emeritus of Arocha. Hello, Peter. Good to be speaking to you.
Good morning and good to be with you.
Right. Can you share a little bit about the genesis of Arocha, which you started over 40 years ago?
Sure. We began it with several other people, and the basic idea was that we saw coming very quickly a crisis in the biosphere, but there seemed to be a gap between one of the major communities who were going to be affected, namely the Christian church around the world, and their understanding of things. And also, there seemed to be basic questions about why nature mattered that were left hanging within the conservation world.
Right.
So to bring those two things together, we proposed a field study centre and a bird observatory in the south of Portugal to see what Christian convictions would look like if they were applied in environmental practice.
Right. And that was 40 years ago. And of course, a lot of things have happened since then in the environment. I think with the advent of social media, these things have been brought to the fore. What are some of the projects in Southeast Asia?
At the moment, we have relatively little going on in Southeast Asia. And that's one of the reasons I'm visiting the region. And one of the reasons our international board and management team will be in Singapore in May. But we've had a lot of people interested in what we're doing around the region for a long time. In Malaysia, we have a group also operating in the Philippines, and there are friends scattered throughout most of the countries of the region.
Right.
But only now do they seem to be catalyzing into project proposals and actual partnerships.
Okay. And what kind of conservation work do you do? Maybe from what you started 40 years ago, and how has it evolved into different kinds of work that you do now?
Yeah, it's a good question, because actually we never tell people what to do in their place or their region. Arocha, as a global movement, has gathered around 5 commitments: that we're Christian, that our core business and our expertise lies in the field of nature conservation, and we have a very strong community emphasis. Typically, Arocha teams and projects run for decades in places. Then we're very culturally diverse, which is why we've kept this inconvenient Portuguese name that means the rock.
Oh.
And also we collaborate very widely with people, whatever their beliefs or lack of them or whatever they think,
Right.
as long as we have similar work in mind.
Right.
But typical projects are in habitats like the forests. We have a tropical forests program, and many of our African organizations are involved in forest conservation in different ways, particularly in Ghana and in Kenya.
Right.
And in Uganda, we're working in an urban context with communities who desperately need clean water, but we're looking at alternatives for using charcoal to boil the water, namely biosand filters. And we do a lot of work with schools as well.
Right.
So it's a whole wide range. If people look at the website, it's quite hard to define Arocha by what we do,
Right.
but it's quite easy to define Arocha by who we are.
Right. And I guess you were saying that it depends on what the needs are, depending on where they're from and all that as well. So you're talking about education. What kind of education programs do you have in place?
We run a lot of work with schools in many of the organizations, and some are very well developed. In Portugal now, some of the teachers who are coming were there as kids on the program earlier on, which is very good.
Right.
In Kenya also, we've developed a program to protect the forest, where the forest is effectively the banker for the school fees, because the reason people were chopping down the forest was to pay secondary school fees.
Right.
And some of the very early kids who got their education through that program, which is called Assets, are now working as graduates, university graduates, with the team. So the advantage of being going for a long time is we've seen how this plays out. But again, the website will show people some of the work that's going. And we also bring together the environmental educators from different countries in order to exchange expertise. And all of those from our African teams recently met in Uganda.
Right. And I know one of the things that you also provide accommodation for people who want to check out their projects, right? And why did you introduce this feature? And why do you think, it's important for people to see what you're doing?
Well, hospitality and community are very important to Arocha. My late wife was a great proponent of this, and she spent half the budget for our very first field study centre on one glorious ancient table. And at the time, it was a vivid discussion, but that table is still in use, and thousands of people have sat around it discussing their work, getting the advice of others, being mentored. And even in the time we were living in that centre, we reckon about 1,500 or 2,000 people came to live with us for a short period of time or a long period of time. So I think people are not just researchers, they're people. And often the work of ecological research and conservation is quite hard going. And you can't do it on your own. You need the support of people around you. And that's why, for us, community is key to the way that Arocha operates.
Right.
We have 8 field study centres now in different parts of the world, from India to Kenya, 2 in France. Canada is quite a large centre as well, where there's a special interns program and they're working on salmon stream restoration.
Right. And like you talk about the work across the world, right? How do you decide what conservation projects to undertake, since there's so many areas to cover and so much of the world? So how do you decide what to undertake?
We do create synergies between our different organizations, but essentially the choice is theirs. They set the priorities. They know what's going on locally. We really do not tell people what to do. As long as there's a true alignment between who they are and Arocha, then we watch that happen. And in fact, the Arocha worldwide family, as it's known, is self-governing. We have a covenant, all with each other. We've never had a headquarters. And all the members of the coordinating team of the Rocha International team live in their local town or project. And we work that way. So we're a very dispersed, if you like, or flat organization that is empowering those who share our vision to join it with the work that they wish to do.
And how important is government support from each of these countries you work with, or is that not required?
It's not required, and it depends very much on the local context as to whether government support is appropriate or desirable. We receive support from, as you'd expect, a very wide range of sources, from universities to grant-making bodies, from private individuals, and sometimes we're part of European Union programs, some of which are quite surprising. For example, the European Union has just funded our French team quite significantly to complete a survey on French Christian attitudes to the environment and climate change. And that kind of work we're very well equipped to do because we have very deep relationships. In the United Kingdom, there are now 7,000 eco-churches as a result of the program that they do. So if you like, what we bring to the effort globally is that we are part of the global Christian church, which incidentally is often the stakeholders where biodiversity is most concentrated on Earth, because it's in the global south.
Right.
So we are able, as it were, to work very closely with those people to deliver this vision.
Right.
Arocha isn't the delivery vehicle, the global church is.
Right, and when people listening to what you're doing, how can people support the work? Is it largely funds? How else can people support the work?
Well, if Christians are watching, they can pray. We'd very much appreciate that. There's multiple ways you can get involved, because this is a community effort. But certainly we welcome financial support. And I think we're very good value for money, if I may say that. I've spent 40 years raising support for Arocha, and we've made it go a very, very long way. And we have a very established track record and a decent organization with a lot of due diligence, so people can support with confidence. Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much for your time. 40 years on and the work that you've been doing. So, of course, if people want to get more information, they can just check out Rocha. And, of course, I've been speaking to Peter Harris, and you've been watching The Shift Asia.
Thanks so much.